clan. And once in a rare occasion, when the conditions are right, then this being is born. And so two possibilities: either wheel-turning monarch, which is they'll have to get all the treasures from the Deva races. Yeah, if you want to refer to this discourse on the Greater Lion's Roar Sutta, right? If this wheel-turning monarch or this universal king doesn't follow the protocols, the wheel treasure will disappear, or maybe the Devas will confiscate them, right? And this wheel treasure is used to sort of conquer different lands. Yeah. So my personal interpretation, this wheel treasure is a spacecraft, yeah? So without that spacecraft, you cannot fly over and conquer the universe. Yeah. Okay, so this is my interpretation. All right. So it's 8:30.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to MSBS Weekly Meditation by Phra Goh. Today is the 20th April 2021. We are very fortunate to have with us Bhante Adhibalo, better known as Phra Goh. Bhante was born on July 14, 1985, and had his bhikkhu ordination into the Theravada tradition of Thai Dhamma sect, Satipatthana Monastery in Johor, Malaysia in 2008. Bhante is currently the Vice President of One Palelai Buddhist Temple, Singapore. We are continuing last week's on different traditions. Bhante will be leading a homage to the Buddha and taking of 5 precepts Buddhists. Let us compose our minds, put our palms together, and welcome. Over to you, Bhante.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Terence, for the intro. Now we shall begin. Okay, the homage, Vandana. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Three refuges. Buddhang saranang gacchami. Dhammang saranang gacchami. Sanghang saranang gacchami. Tutiyampi Buddhang saranang gacchami. Dutiyampi Dhammang saranang gacchami. Dutiyampi Sanghang saranang gacchami. Tatiyampi Buddhang saranang gacchami. Tatiyampi Dhammang saranang gacchami. Tatiyampi Sanghang saranang gacchami. 5 precepts. Panatipata Veramani Sikkhapadang Samadhiyami. Adinadana Veramani Sikkhapadang Samadhiyami. Kamesu Miccācara Veramani Sikkhapadang Samadhiyami. Musavada Veramani Sikkhapadang Samadhiyami. Sura Meraya Majapamadatthana Veramani Sikkhapadang Samadhiyami. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. All right, good evening, everyone. And today we are continuing this topic on multi-traditions, same liberation. Right, so we've basically talked about some of the history on the early Buddhism, the different schools, and today we are going to talk about the different diversity of practices. Right, so we shall continue, from from here. Okay, so this is just we talked about this last week. The Theravada's classification, or the modern Theravada's classification of the 40 meditation objects, meditation topics, right? And every tradition, again, more or less has something like that, but they practice differently. But if you want to talk about not stereotyping, that I would say every individual will practice differently, right? So, for example, let's say when we talk about visualizations, the Theravada will just visualize on the left column on the different this, right? Earth this, fire this, water this, and they just stare at a device or an object. It can be a flame, can be a bowl of water, whatever it is, and they just stare into that. Or any the corpse kind of meditation, bodily contemplation. They have to either if they are fortunate to have a chance to look at an autopsy or a decaying body, then they can use that as a visualization. If not, most of the time it's just external parts of the body. That's the minimum requirement. Then we'll talk about, let's say, the Mahayana or the Tibetan traditions. They have this thing called the visualizations of different Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, right? And that again, some of the visualizations aren't open to everybody to visualize. They have these things called initiation sometimes. Yeah, initiation. That means a person has to take up certain vows, go through certain purification practices before they can take such practices. If not, everybody just practice by themselves, and then something might go wrong. Yeah. So there's certain protocols being set in place. There's a teacher, guide, and the kind of stuff. So this is much lacking again in the Theravada Buddhism, right? But again, this is generally the visualization part. So we talked about the diversity last week on the different, how do you call it, the 6 contemplations, right? So again, in short, whatever meditation object or meditation topic we are using to practice, the whole idea is if a person can reduce greed, hatred, delusion, right? That means we take the Four Noble Truths as the guideline, then basically you're on the right path. So if it doesn't reduce greed, hatred, delusion, right, the more you practice, the more frustration you get. Right? Some people practice halfway, my mind cannot come down. Meditate, cannot keep still, then they give up. Give up meditation, right? So sometimes there's no proper instruction or no proper guidance. So there are many, many factors, not just diversity of practice. Some people like jump here and there. Maybe for my routine, I don't really emphasize a lot on visualization. I just do it on one particular phase, on the bodily detachment. Then the most of it is not really much on visualization. So again, it comes to either community or individual teachers. Some may emphasize more on visualization, some don't emphasize on visualization. Some maybe they do more on the open awareness, more like vipassana. Some do more on samatha. So every teacher will teach differently, right? So with all these different practices, right, how do you know whether it can reach liberation or not? So again, I emphasize is you have to look at the Four Noble Truths. Again, there are many factors. Sometimes is the maybe the teacher themselves not qualified to give the proper instruction, and sometimes the student not ready to receive the instruction, not enough wisdom to understand the instruction. So I give a very interesting analogy or interesting case study from the suttas. There's this particular instructor monk, teacher monk, who is not enlightened, but then he's trained a group of young monks to like meditate, and then sort of like give them very rigorous training, ask them to wake up very early to meditate and sit for long hours and whatever not. Yeah. So one fine day, these trainee monks all got enlightened. And according to the story, some of them may have certain psychic abilities, and they want to check whether their teacher is enlightened or not. And they check, and they found, the teacher is not enlightened. They read his mind, not enlightened, right? So one day in their practice or in their training, when they wake up early as usual, the teacher somehow is not waking up early, still sleeping in the room. So they decided to come up with a plan. So some of them decided to come up with scary images to sort of wake the teacher. And so the teacher got up, and eventually they sort of learned from each other, and eventually the teacher got enlightened. So this is one case study which I remembered from the Theravada tradition. I'm not sure the actual title of the story, but yeah, I recall it's on the stories. And another case example would be another elder monk, very, very good in giving discourses, very knowledgeable, very intelligent, but he's very senior. However, he's not enlightened yet. Not enlightened, right? So one day he sort of found out that, okay, he's lack of something, he's still missing something. So he wanted to find out this truth, how to practice and improve himself. However, he lacked the humility, lacked this humility, which is a big obstacle to progress. So if a person is very proud, very hard to learn, because if a person is very keen to learn, normally they sort of request from a person to learn, right, or ask a question or seek some advice. So normally in the monastic tradition, there's something like a loophole, or rather, in the system. If let's say a monk is very senior, they don't pay respect to the junior monks, which is nothing wrong, which is normal, right? But in terms of seeking the Dhamma or teaching, right? Let's say they're already very senior, and sometimes it might be a bit embarrassing, to go find for them to find some a junior monk which they think is more knowledgeable or more advanced at practice to learn, right? Then they have to sort of like show Anjali and put their palms together and ask a question. If not, they just approach and ask. Might be conflicting, in terms of ranking, in terms of seniority, is correct, for them to just approach without clasping their palms and asking a question. But then it feels weird, if they want to request and learn the Dhamma, then it doesn't reduce their ego enough to receive the teaching. So there's certain loophole in this thing. So, but however, there's a formal kind of ritual. But normally it's between the junior monk and the senior monk. The junior monk will sort of bow and sort of seek dependence on a senior monk. But there's no ritual for a senior monk to seek dependence on a more junior monk to learn. So that's the loophole. Okay, so what happened is this senior monk went through this so-called row of monastics. So these monastics who are so-called enlightened, they know of this loophole, and to them it's a bit rude to try to sort of teach a senior monk, right? And this group of more junior monks, although they're enlightened, they decided that, okay, somehow there might be a small loophole in the rule, is that a samanera, a novice monk, don't have this certain regulation, right? So there's a very young boy, a novice monk, 7 years old, right? So what they plan to do is, if any monk is being approached, a bhikkhu, right, the enlightened bhikkhu is being approached, he will direct this intelligent senior monk to a more younger monk until he reaches this samanera. So they agreed on this. Okay, so one day this senior enlightened monk went and approached this group of more junior monks and asked them, okay, I feel something lacking, I wish to learn the Dhamma. And then they just arrow to the next monk in line, and he approached and ask the same question. You want to learn something, then arrow, all the way down to this novice monk, which is a 7-year-old boy. Yeah, 7-year-old boy. That means he haven't received the bhikkhu ordination, the full ordination. So he's observing like 10 precepts, right? So he's like surprised. Why you refer me to this young boy? But then this young boy is an enlightened being. This young boy, 7-year-old, an arahant, right? So but then he no choice because all the monks don't want to teach him. So but then he he's desperate to learn and improve. So he have to follow instructions for this Samanera. So this Samanera is like playing around with him, ask him to run here, run there, roll over the mud and jump into the pond of mud and roll over, that kind of stuff. So he did all this. So he's trying to prove that he reduced his ego. He wants to sincerely learn. So one fine day, this this novice monk asked him to find an ant hole. That means nest of an ant, and ask this senior monk how to stop these ants from coming out from the hole. Right, so there are this nest has many exit and entry points. Right, so when he was trying to use his fingers or whatever to block the hole, then he suddenly have a realization to stop these so-called senses. Yeah, these doors, these holes of the ant nest is something like your 6 senses. So by stopping all these things from coming out and only leaving one open, which is the mind door, right? Then it's easier to observe the ants coming in and out, right? So from there, then he carried on in progress and he advanced from there. Yeah, so this is another classic example of this call it conflicting in interest in even within monastics. And let's say in the Zen tradition, one of the popular stories is the sixth patriarch, the Chinese sixth patriarch, the Liu Zu Huineng. Yeah, one of the classic stories is that in the Zen tradition, they have to pass these so-called the patriarchy, right, from one master to another. They have to choose a successor. So the fifth patriarch is actually a very senior monk, and at that point of time, he was looking for a successor, and he sort of held something like competition, a poetry competition for his monastics to write something like short poem on Buddhism, whatever they've learned. And this Huineng at that time, he wasn't a monk. He was just a layman helping out in the kitchen. And interestingly, he wasn't literate. That means he's unable to read and write. Right, so that was his sort of challenge. And amongst the competition, one of the top students, the best monastic disciple, wrote a very interesting poem. Sinwi, do you know the poem that he wrote? Something like polishing the mirror, or there's a Bodhi tree or something like that.
Right, I read it before.
Yeah.
But I can't really recite it. But the meanings, I'm sure Vante is aware. So it's about the mirror. But I think Huineng basically says that there is really no mirror to begin with.
Yeah.
Why is there to clean?
Yeah, correct. Yeah, so basically the so-called the supposedly top monk student, he wrote this poem to say the mind is something like a mirror, so you need to clean it every day to purify the mind, something like that. Then when this Huineng went past and saw this entry, right, this poem, he asked somebody to read for him. What does it mean? So then he found, he wanted to write his own entry, right, his own poem. And he wrote that, okay, this I think Bhuti Panusu, there's something like this no Bodhi tree. Okay, there's no tree in the enlightened mind. something like that. I do not know how to translate directly. But the second part, the mirror part, is he mentioned there's no mirror, right, and no dust falling on the mirror also, right? So where is there? What is there to clean or something like that, along this line? Yeah. So you need to actually read the actual Chinese idiom or the poetry to find out the meaning. Okay, so this was his reply, and the fifth successor, I mean the fifth patriarch, saw his entry and was very impressed, and he chose him as the next successor, right? So that caused sort of like a big hoo-ha. The monks weren't happy. How can we choose this fella as the next successor? Not even a monk, Then and that's the Chinese Zen tradition. And right, so we talk about the complications. So the practice itself is neutral. It's basically how the practitioner practice it. So that's the point, and many factors, the student, the teacher, how much effort you practice, and so on, right? So this is diversity in practice. But eventually, if the conditions are right, like the proper supporting guidance, you put in enough effort, you have right understanding, you practice along with the Eightfold Path, all the meditation objects can reach this liberation. All right, okay, so I move on to the next slide. Okay, so this is one example in terms of diversity in the Buddha's time, right? The different disciples have different cliques because they specialize in different practices. The Buddha can teach, all these 84,000 Dhamma doors, the 40 meditation objects being shown on the previous screen, but not everybody can specialize in all of that. Some people are more proficient in some or less proficient in others, right? So this is one case study, so I'll just briefly read it. The discourse on walking. Okay, so it starts off with the Blessed One addressed the monks. Do you, bhikkhu, see Sariputta pacing up and down with some monks? And they said, yes, Bhante. And that means they acknowledge to the Buddha, yes, all of them, bhikkhus, are monks of great wisdom. So basically, Venerable Sariputta, being the right-hand disciple of the Buddha, is so-called the foremost in wisdom amongst all the disciples. So he's very good in analyzing the teachings and teaching. So whoever is inspired or wish to be like him, right? So he has this particular clique or group of students who admire these qualities. So they move together, they move around together. So this is for Venerable Sariputta. So the next monk the Buddha pointed out is this Venerable Maha. Right, so the same thing, this group of monks pacing back and forth. So these are the group inclined to great psychic power. So Venerable Maha is the left hand disciple of the Buddha, known to be foremost in psychic abilities. So this is his specialty, right? So those monks who have special visions or special abilities and nobody to talk to, nobody to guide them. So this is the special interest group. Yeah? Okay, then the third one, Venerable Mahakassapa. So these are the group who specialize in ascetic practice. So these are the people who like to live in the forest, live in a cave, like to stay in the charnel grounds, eat one meal a day, and that kind of stuff. So these are the we call it the 13 Dhutanga practices, right? And according to the Chinese Zen tradition or the Zen tradition, their lineage come from this Venerable Mahakassapa. So you have accounts of the early Zen patriarchs. They observe these, some of them observe this not lying down to sleep. That means if they want to sleep, they have to sit down and sleep. So this is one of the hardest moderate asceticism. So in Buddhism, we practice certain form of asceticism, but considered moderate. Yeah, but out of the most difficult of the moderate is the not lying down to sleep. like the rest is eating 1 meal a day. It's also part of the 13 ascetic practice. So you want to compare with the other religions' ascetic practice. Buddhist ascetic practice is considered very mild, really. When the Buddha, before he got enlightened, he practiced the more austere forms of ascetic practices and almost died. Yeah, then he decided to stop these austere or extreme forms of ascetic practice. Right, so he accepted certain forms of moderate ascetic practice, which are considered optional on top of the monastic rules. Yeah. Okay, then the next one is this Venerable Anuruddha. He has this divine eye. So interesting, the story is Venerable Anuruddha is a blind monk. He practiced so intensely until he go blind. So put in too much effort, too much exertion until he got blind, never rest. And then he keeps staring at the light nimitta, whatever it is, and never rest. And got blind, became blind. So all the followers of this member Anuruddha also very keen in the divine eye. And same with this Venerable Punna Mantaniputta. So it is said it's like the great Dharma speaker. Right? I'm not sure whether is it him or somebody else. He is great in formulating or structuring sentences into like poetry. So when he give like a Dhamma talk, it's like it's like a poetry. Yeah. So it's very sort of pleasant to hear and very skilled. So this is for this venerable. And next one is Venerable Upali, this Vinaya expert. So the group of monks that follow him is like something like the lawyers and lawmakers, very specialized in studying the monastic rules. And the next one is Venerable Ananda. Venerable Ananda is known to memorize all the teachings. So whoever follow him are basically like the reciters. Whoever want to recall the teachings, then they follow this Venerable Ananda. And at that point of time, since the Buddha is still alive, Venerable Ananda wasn't enlightened yet. Yeah, wasn't enlightened. And the last one is this Devadatta. Like we talked in the first session of the series, he's plotting to overthrow the Buddha or try to kill the Buddha. So he's the monk with evil desires. So whoever follows him is like the birds of the same feathers, they flock together, right? So they also impressed with this Devadatta's presentation. His presentation on how he's going to overtake and become the leader, and how he's going to control the so-called Buddhist community or the monastic community, and then they supported him. Yeah. So these are the group of monks, and so interestingly, this is the short presentation for today, and the Buddha is addressing to these monks about Venerable Devadatta. So can it be said that the Buddha is back-mouthing Venerable Devadatta? Can this be said? Okay, so a lot of it has to do with intention, right? If the intention is for the new monks not to follow the wrong path, so I think the Buddha's intention is to let the monks know which monk is specialized in which, and let them choose their own teacher and not follow the bad company. Right. So a lot in the Mangala Sutta. Also avoid the fools, associate the wise. Right. So I think same, even your parents or mentors or good teachers will tell, hey, don't follow bad company. Or I think, hey, this fella you follow, no, I don't think is good company. So it's not not really like back-mouthing, but more like showing concern. Yeah. So sometimes got to do with intention. All right. So Any questions? I end the short sharing for today. We'll carry more on next week.
I have a question, Bante.
Yeah.
The seniority of the monks
Yeah.
in Theravada tradition, is it based on the number of vasa, or is it
correct.
the age?
Yeah, based on
How does
the
it,
number of vasas, that means how long they ordain. Yeah?
meaning that people of let's say a 60-year-old just but 1 month become a bhikkhu with let's say 35 years old, but have been 5 years, in as a monk. So consider the 25-year-old is more senior than the 60-year-old.
Yeah, correct. If a person is ordained since 20 years old and then he reaches 25 years old, right? That means he has already been a monk for 5 years, a bhikkhu, no, for 5 years. And if let's say a person becomes a bhikkhu at the age of just ordained only, at the age of let's say 60 years old, right? Then he has to respect the biologically younger monk, but no, in terms of seniority, they measure by the years they ordain.
Okay.
All right. So this is the contention. Even before this rule was being set, right, in terms of how to distinguish seniority, the monks were like having something like a debate or some form of discussion. How should we arrange the seniority, like who goes first, to let's say receive the food or something like that, yeah? Or when let's say we sit, in certain order, who should be in front and who should be behind. So they have different monks have different perspectives. Some say, we should go by attainment, who is more realized in the teachings. And sometimes a bit hard to measure, who is more realized. And the next one suggested go by the caste system. The Brahmin caste should go first, and the warrior caste, and followed by the traders and whatever. Some we should go by the caste system, and some say go by age, go by a biological age. And another say, go by the seniority, how long you've ordained, something like that. So different monks have different ideas. So they were discussing, cannot come to a conclusion. Then the Buddha came by and said, okay, we should go by the number of years you have ordained. So that was it. So that's how it came about. Yeah.
Bante, I understand that the number of years ordained can be different from the number of vasas spent by the monk, right? So the seniority is based on the vasa or on the number of years ordained?
Okay. Yeah, technically, it's by the number of vasas. That means they've gone through the range retreat. So most of the monastics, by right now, should go through the vasas. Sometimes, for whatever strange reason, they might accidentally break the vasa. Like, for example, let's say they spend the vasa overseas. Then halfway through, they have visa problem. Then they need to go back. Yeah. So again, that depends on the community, whether the monks in the community, whether they want to accept it as complete the vasa or the vasa not completed. Of course, there's this thing called 7-day stipulation. Let's say if they need to go back to their own country to settle the visa, they have this 7-day allowance. Let's say during the pandemic, COVID, right? Then the 14-day quarantine, and that's it. Oh, they broke the stipulation, and how? Right, so again, this is a lot of issues, yeah. So it depends on that specific community to have agreement, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Right.
I'm also very curious whether this vasa term is only applicable in Theravada tradition, or also the Mahayanas practice this.
Yeah, the Mahayana, they don't have vasa. They have this thing called summer retreat in the Chinese tradition, especially because if they use the Chinese seasonal calendar, there are 4 seasons: spring, summer, autumn, winter. Whereas India, they use 3 seasons only.
Okay, thanks.
Hey, no problem.
Bante, I just want to
Yeah.
share with you regarding Angie's question. I think in Mahayana, I remember that when we line up for any of the chanting section or whatnot, typically it goes according to the seniority in terms of when you were ordained. Yeah. And then if it is, because there are times where they came in as a Samanera or Samanera different time, but when they ordain it the same, then depends on how
Early the Samanera.
Correct, yeah.
Yeah.
So
Okay, very good point. Yeah, so sometimes people ordain on the same date or same time. But in the Thai tradition, we look into like even hour and minute. The preceptor or the assistant of the preceptor will look at the clock and then record down by the time the chant finish the ritual, what time they finish ordination, then they record down.
But
So,
a bit more
yeah,
about
yeah.
the Tibetan tradition, right? There is a reincarnation from one life to another life,
Yeah.
you know. And then even the small little boy also considered as a high level. So this not based on the Vasa, but what is it based on?
Yeah, so this one is no, it's probably quite unique in the Tibetan tradition, especially for the lineage holders and the lineage masters. So you can't find this in the other traditions.
So how is it? Is it based on the attainment or the?
There is
I don't know.
probably separate.
Or
Separate.
who become the teacher and who is the student? So based on that, I don't know.
They have like probably have separate protocols on it because I think the monastics also they have this seniority of vasas to follow. Yeah, but in terms of the lineage holder, that is also another set of rules. Yeah. So again, it's probably up to each community to follow, prioritize, which protocol is oversees, supersedes which protocol. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other question?
but I have a question. So the last sutta that you mentioned, the feathers from the same birds, does it basically means that as a learner, we are going to basically gravitate to different type of learning method and based on whatever that we were our condition. So some will be probably like Mr. Jen Lim probably would like to do the divine eye and psychic power, and he will basically be drawn into that kind of teachers more. Others are drawn to more Vinaya. And so basically what is Buddha trying to say? Okay.
Yeah, correct. One is there's a karmic factor. There's a karmic already certain bond, certain collective karma involved. So that could be one factor. And another one is got to do with individual uh, discernment, individual preference or capacity. Are they able to choose or discern which set of practices are more comfortable for them? Sometimes there might be certain karmic group, collective karma, so they join, but then they're not comfortable at that, but then they do not know how to switch, or they do not have other options. Yes, then they just stay in that group. But some people are, again, everybody's condition is different. Some are too choosy. They cannot settle for one. They go to one teacher, not happy, then they change, go to another teacher, not happy, keep changing. So this is another extreme. So it's good to investigate, good to do your own research, but then you still, how do you call it? A lot depends on the maturity, right? On both ends, on the teacher and the student. Yeah. All right. Any other questions? on the Zoom or on the comments on Facebook?
Nothing from Facebook.
Ah, nothing. Okay. If not, we have a short break. Now it's 9:10 and see you 9:15 for the guided meditation session. All right. Okay, we are back. Now it's 9:15. And rest returned. I wait for a few more people. So I'm waiting for the rest to return. Okay. Any questions, Anjeev? No, nothing. Okay, so I guess we can start, yeah? Find a comfortable sitting position. And make sure back is upright and body relaxed. And we're going to start off with the routine on bodily contemplations. And we are going to first wish all the hairs well and happy from head to toe. And all these hairs go through this impermanence, yeah, this birth and death. We keep on contemplating on the many, many cycles of the birth and death of the hair, hairs growing, hairs falling, hairs growing and falling. By doing so, you're actually being mindful of the Dharma, yeah? Mindful of impermanence. And does this lead inward? Does this craving, right, reduce? And does the mind gets to settle and look inward? And when we practice along the way, that means through this process of purification, the mind is actually trying, right, to slowly reach to the state of this Buddha's mind. Getting closer, that means we are slowly getting closer and trying to understand the Buddha. What is this pure mind that he has experienced and achieved? What kind of truth is he trying to share with us? In the other traditions, they call this Buddha potential. Yeah, I don't like to use the term Buddha nature, but it is Buddha potential. As the minds get purer and purer, or more and more settled, and you get closer to what the Buddha has experienced. So to achieve that, you need to be mindful of impermanence all the time. And then we can think of the nails and wish them well and happy. On the fingernails and toenails, may they be well and happy. And all the nails are subject to birth and death. So you keep on thinking many cycles of this growing and falling of the nails. ask ourselves, are these nails truly self? Can we tell the nails not to go through birth and death? This is a bit of a Zen koan, yeah? Okay, and then we can start to visualize the teeth, all the teeth inside the mouth. May they be well and happy. All the upper rows of teeth and lower rows of teeth, may they be well and happy. And all these teeth are subject to birth and death. So keep on thinking of the decaying of the teeth, change shape and size, it gets dirty, turns yellow, brown, black, with cavities, and eventually they fall off. And we can ask, are the teeth truly self? Can we tell the teeth not to go through birth and death? And next we can think of the skin. From head to toe, we wish all the skin well and happy. And all this skin go through birth and death. You keep on thinking of the birth and death of the skin growing, skin falling, many, many, many cycles. And then we can ask ourselves, are this skin truly self? And we tell the skin and not to go through this birth and death. So again, different tradition, different schools have different interpretation of this understanding of self. Yeah? Some say have non-self, some say not self, some say there's totally no self, some say there is eventually an ultimate self. So then in the experience, which is the clinging ego kind of self, and if that's reduced, what is left? So whatever label you call the more purified mind, doesn't matter. The most important thing is to reduce greed and hatred. Okay, and the next part of the body, we're going to visualize beneath the skin or the flesh. If you want to continue together the fat, the nervous system, blood vessels, right, ligaments from head to toe. And we wish all the flesh well and happy. And if you're unable to visualize the flesh, then we can just use the sensations. Just feel the sensations from head to toe and wish them well and happy. And all this flesh goes through birth and death. Cells will grow and pass away all the time, sometimes wear and tear. You might be able to feel muscle tension, aches, soreness, or tear, pull, whatever. Right, so all these are happening all the time. So you think of the birth and death cycles, many, many cycles. Okay, and we can ask ourselves, are this flesh truly self? Can we tell the flesh not to go through this birth and death? And then we can start to visualize the bones, right? Our entire skeletal structure from head to toe. We wish them well and happy. And if you're unable to visualize, then the same thing, feel the sensations from head to toe, the bones, right? Whatever sensation you may feel, just wish them well and happy. And all these bones go through birth and death. The bone cells keep growing and passing away, change shape and size. Sometimes they grow or lose in bone density, maybe micro fractures or even fractures. So we keep on thinking the birth death cycle of the bones many, many times. And we're going to ask ourselves, are these bones truly self? Can we tell the bones not to go through this birth and death? And then we can think of the internal organs, right? From head to toe, we wish them well and happy. Same thing, if you cannot visualize your organs, then can use sensations. Then we can think of the impermanence of the organs. So the cells keep growing and dying. We think of the birth and death of the cells of the organs many, many times. So for samatha practice, we just focus on one sense door, right? So if, let's say for visualization, it's just the mind door. We sort of ignore the other senses. And next, we're going to ask ourselves, are these organs truly self? Can we tell the organs not to go through this birth and death? And the next phase of meditation, we are no longer needed to visualize. It's basically using the sensation, right? You're going to wish all beings in front well and happy. So there's no need to like deliberately visualize. Any form of visualization is a form of stereotyping and sort of restricting this boundlessness of this loving kindness. And of course, there's no need to deliberately push your attention to the front, just a gentle wish. Yeah. And we come back to ourselves, and we wish all beings behind well and happy. And we come back to ourselves, and we wish all beings on the left well and happy. And we come back to ourselves, and we wish all beings on the right well and happy. And we come back to ourselves. Now we wish all beings above well and happy. And we come back to ourselves, and we wish all beings below well and happy. And we come back to ourselves. And this time around, we feel the entire body again from head to toe with a loving kindness. And no need to visualize, just feel the sensations. And whatever sensation that arises, wish it well and happy. Any change in sensation, also keep wishing it well and happy. Whole idea is not to let the mind stagnant, right, for more than 2 seconds. Once you leave the mind idle, then and that's it. And the mind will cling on to non-relevant objects, but to daydream, worry, and whatever not yet. So keep generating a thought of loving kindness for every new sensation. And now we're going to remember this emotion of loving kindness and base level. And now we're going to extend this loving kindness all directions and wish all beings and the entire universe well and happy. Same thing, no need to deliberately visualize or deliberately push the mind in any direction. Just a gentle wish and observe this state of mind If there are any new sensation that arise, we keep wishing it well and happy. So when we think of all beings, basically it's all perceptions, all formations, including this body, yeah, that we think of earlier, that is a perception. So we wish all dharmas well and happy. And as the mind extends further or settles down, and then you can remember this emotion. The calmer the mind, the more boundless it is. Yeah. You shouldn't be feeling any form of tension or pushing. And of course, not forgetting to keep generating thoughts of loving kindness to every sensation. And we are switching to the next sublime state, which is compassion. And we are wishing all beings, may they be free from suffering. So you take note of the initial generation of compassion, this emotion. And as the mind develops further, whatever new sensation that arise, new formations, new dharmas, we also wish them free from suffering. Normally we talk about the three seals of Buddhism, three universal seals: impermanence, suffering, and non-self. Any form of clinging to this impermanence, the arising and passing away of sensations, and there will be suffering, dukkha. So by contemplating compassion, you wish all formations, all beings free from suffering. You're trying to approach from the angle of this contemplation of suffering. So how to be truly free from suffering is this detachment. If you just have compassion without impermanence, that means there's no detachment, then you get this depression instead of compassion. Yeah? So you wish all beings be free from suffering. You need certain wisdom. You need to practice detachment. Every moment you need to sort of condition or prepare yourself to observe this change, this impermanence, arising and passing away of all sensations. Can be within, without, near or far, whatever you can perceive, wherever your attention is at, right? Wish it free from suffering. Okay, so while being mindful of impermanence all the time, we physically conclude the session. Right, if you think you're ready, we can open your eyes, but mentally remain mindful of impermanence. Okay, so this practice of cultivation is whole day affair. It's not just in the sitting session. Any questions? Now it's 10 o'clock. No, all okay. If everyone's okay, then we can end the session. In the dedication of merits. Akasata ca bhumata devanaga mahirika punyang tang anumoditva cirang rakantu loka sasanam etavata ca amhehi sampadang punya sampadang sabbe deva sabbe bhuta sabbe sata anumodantu sabba sabbati siddhya. Transference of merits to departed. Idang me nyati nang hotu, sukita hotu nyatayo. Idang me nyati nang hotu, sukita hotu nyatayo. Idang me nyati nang hotu, sukita hotu nyatayo. Aspiration, imina punya kamena, mame bala samagamo. Satang samagamo hotu yavadibana patiya. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. All right, that's it. Any announcements from Terence? Okay, there's nothing then. I'll see you all next week. And good night.
Thank you, Bante. Good night.
Yeah, no problem. Good night.
Sadhu, sadhu.
Sadhu.